So we want to thank everyone for being here today. If you haven't had the chance, please introduce yourself in the chat. My name is Raquel Wilson. I am the proud Youth Voice Program Manager for Foster and Media Connections Youth Voice Program. And I'm so happy to have you all here today. And you are in tune for a great part 2 conversation based on the previous webinar that we hosted last year or in the beginning of this year, titled Somebody's Child or Nobody's Child. And this is to explore and speak with foster youth who've had lived experience with the child welfare system based on their parents being incarcerated or deported. And so again, we are happy to have you. Thank you to all of our panelists. And yes, let's get started. So a little bit about the Youth Voice Program. If you haven't heard, we have different opportunities, and our goal is to amplify the voices of foster youth and those who have been impacted by the juvenile justice system through educational workshops. We have writing and poetry contests. We have paid contributor roles. I just created a new externship role that is going to be taking place collaborating with UCLA. And so just tons of opportunities as a former foster youth and the experience, and based on the experience that I had or lack of experience that I had, I just want to be able to provide and use this platform to provide resources and opportunities to foster youth that wasn't afforded to me when I was emancipating, and also use this platform to help foster youth, teach them how to write and use their stories and turn it into powerful pieces that can be published, in addition to all sorts of different opportunities that we have to help interested foster youth, just feel empowered and get that confidence that they need to help create some policy change or some development change, or just change with the child within the child welfare system and the juvenile justice system as a whole. And so at this time, you guys should see a quick poll pop up on your screen. And this is just for us to know, how did you hear about us? If you're a current foster youth, if you're advocating for foster youth, what in that proximity are you advocating in? I'm sorry. And so please fill this out. This just helps us know how we can, get our events to more people and reach more foster youth, and reach more foster parents and reach more advocates that work in environments that foster youth are in. And so we're just going to allow a couple of more minutes, seconds, for everybody to be able to take a quick answer the 2 questions, and then you should see the results pop up on your screen very soon. Yes, so we have a nice percentage of social workers and attorneys here, foster parents, those who work with foster youth, which I'm always happy to see. I'm really grateful, because the goal of this program is to reach as many foster youth as we can, and try to, help them and empower them. And so thank you so much for being here today and participating in this poll. It really helps us stay on top of how we can reach more foster youth and how we can actually tell you guys more about our events. And so, yes, at this time, I would like to take the opportunity to introduce our lovely panelists that I'm very excited for you all to meet. So I am going to start with Jackie first. So Jackie Rebels. I hope I'm saying it correctly. I'm sorry if I didn't. I'm really bad with names, but if I messed it up, please unmute yourself and let me know so I can correct it, because that is your name and your brand. But Jackie is a policy enthusiast, consultant, and most importantly, a dog mom of 2. After living in Los Angeles foster care system in the Indian Child Welfare Unit for over 15 years of her life, Jackie was tired of the same statistics of Black and brown youth failing in the system. Identifying as both indigenous and Latina, I'm so sorry. Jackie was set on a career to level the playing field for youth of color. Jackie has sat in various leadership positions to advocate and shape policy for Los Angeles foster youth. Currently, she is serving as a consultant for the Office of Child Protection, working on a national initiative for foster youth called Thriving Families, Safer Children. Jackie is a youth commissioner for the Board of Supervisors and was appointed by the Board of Supervisors, Janet Hahn. Jackie also earned a Bachelor's of Science degree in Business Management at California University of Long Beach and is projected to earn her master's degree in Public Policy from UCLA in June 2022. So Jackie, thank you so much. We are so happy to have you here today. I actually had the pleasure of meeting Jackie through one of the workshops that we hosted with the LA Youth Commission, that those stories are actually getting ready to go out next week. And I'm so happy to be able to re-engage you, Jackie, and you come to find another outlet to be able to amplify your voice in addition to the writing opportunity. And so you guys, please, if you want to join, I will tell you more about our newsletter and how to sign up more so you guys can be able to read some of the lovely stories that all of our panelists have written for the Youth Voice program under the imprint. And so next we have Alexis Urbina, who has been volunteering and giving back to various communities since she was 8. In 2019, she graduated with an associate's degree in sociology and in child development. She currently attends California State University of Los Angeles, where she continues to fight and give back to various communities by majoring in social work. Urbina is a huge social and rational justice advocate and has fought for rights of many people. She has collaborated with many great programs and organizations such as California Youth Connection, Los Angeles Reproductive Health Equity Program, the Department of Children and Family Service, Independent City, Youth Led, just to name a few, and so many more. She has been with CYC since 2014 and is honored to do great advocacy work to better the child welfare system. In her free time, she enjoys practicing yoga and meditation, roller skating, collecting crystals, visiting new places, and making art. She plans to provide youth with equitable resources and fair chances that she was denied. She wants to spread hope and positivity and values, working on herself to do so. And so Alexis, thank you so much for being here today. Alexis is one of my first babies from when I first started working here. Probably like one of the first people that submitted an op-ed through like my first submission that I did when I first started working at Foster Media Connection. So I'm really good to see like you and your growth and all of the things that you have done and the impact that you have made using your lived experience. And so thank you. And then so next we have Ariel Pree, who is a former foster youth rising senior at San Francisco State University. She's also a mother, affordable housing advocate, a foster youth advocate, and a mental health advocate. She aspires to be a PhD candidate upon graduating and helping dismantle systematic oppression and inherited public policies such as education, public assistance programs, and criminal justice. Additionally, she is working towards conducting further research on the triad of effects that poverty has on people of color and immigrants. She hopes to leave the world a better place where there will be more equity and inclusion for all people. And so Ariel, again, I just gotta, shout you guys out individually, because Ariel is one of my babies who came as a panelist, and she just continues to keep showing up, amplifying her voice, writing, a great writer, and just being an advocate. And so Ariel, in addition to being an outstanding mom, like she literally, we've had conversations with her baby and my baby, like all around. So I appreciate Ariel because you are definitely a force to be reckoned with. All of you ladies are, and I'm happy to have you all. And so certainly last but not least was Shauna Fairbanks. And unfortunately, she was not able to be here today due to an emergency, but we do appreciate her. She has been a part of the Youth Voice program since for almost 2 years now, participating in a webinar panel as a panelist, and in addition to writing too as well. And so although she couldn't be here today, we still want to shout her out and give her flowers as well. And so thank you all again to our panelists. And now to the moment everybody's been waiting for, which is my favorite part. And so before we get started with the discussion, I want to just let everybody know, especially our panelists, that this is a safe space. I want our foster youth and panelists and people in the audience to feel that they can, please leave a question that you would like one of our panelists to ask when we get to that part. Our panelists is a safe space, so I don't want you to feel inclined to overshare sensitive on too sensitive subjects, but please do not feel silenced to not share if you do find the courage to do so and find the empowerment. Of course, I'm going to lift you up. And so with that being said, if you have any questions for our panelists, please chime in. We also have two of our previous attendees, Deshaun D for short, and Ryan Ross in the chat. that will also be answering questions as they have experience and was a part of our a part of the part one discussion that we had on the same topic. And so, yes, let's get into the discussion. And so I'm going to ask this question to everybody, but I would like for you all to your experience in foster care and what that was like for you. And I'll pass it over to Jackie first.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here this morning. My experience in foster care, I like to say, was the worst thing that ever happened to me. I entered foster care when I was 5 years old, and that was due to a father who was absent and at the time was serving and is still serving a life sentence in prison, and my mother who struggled with drug addiction and severe mental health issues. And so at the time when I was 5 years old, that's when I first entered foster care, and I cycled through foster homes and group homes and kinship care. And I ultimately ended up aging out when I was 18 through a group home in Hollywood. And I ended up going to college after that. But my experience in foster care overall was okay. But like I said, I think it shaped me to who I am today, and I wouldn't change a thing about it.
I love that you said it was something similar to a gift and a curse, because a lot of us have those bad experiences, but ultimately a lot of us know that if we would have stayed where we were in our homes and in those environments, then that probably wouldn't have been the best idea anyways as well. So thank you so much, Jackie, for sharing that. I'll pass it over to Ariel next, and then Alexis, you can feel free to jump right in.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ariel. I'm so happy to be here and to just give my lived experience. With my experience with foster care, the number one thing is child services failed me. Before I was placed in foster care, there was like 10 to 15 complaints. They were surprised how there were so many complaints and how they didn't give me until I was 14. So they failed me on that end. And then just going through the system, I definitely agree with Jackie. Like, it wasn't a good experience for me, but it allowed me at least the space to get the mental health services where I can be able to start healing from the complex trauma of living in poverty, not having a dad, again, dealing with a mom that was having mental health issues and not getting the proper services as well. So, I'm grateful that I was able to go through that because it gave me a lot of life skills that I use every single day: advocacy, public speaking. And it made me want to be the change maker in my community. It wasn't the best experience, but I couldn't imagine just staying in that situation and just staying in that disempowerment. So yes, that was my experience.
For me, I feel like I definitely had a different experience. So I come from a more affluent background, and I always kind of had my dad in my life. But at age 8, that's when my dad was deported back to Africa, Nigeria. That's where he's from. And then my mom kind of got like really heavy into drugs after that and just different things. So, yeah, I just spend a lot of my time trying to tell people that a lot of people have this one-sided view of what foster care is, or maybe you come from like a poor area or something like that, and it's not always the case. Rich people have rich people problems too. And that's my main mission, is making sure people know that. And even though foster care was really up and down for me, I also feel like the other panelists, like, it was probably the best for me, and it's definitely what I wanted.
Thank you. Thank you all so much for sharing. So I want to skip the briefly and dive a little bit more into detail. So as a former foster youth with parents who were incarcerated, what is like a significant memory that you have during that period of time, or like a core memory that stayed with you still present to this day, or that you remember staying with you until you went through your healing or your mental health service? And I'll start with Ariel.
I have two. I think one of them was just, when I was 5 and my mom got arrested, like right in front of me. We were walking off the door, going to school, and police just showed up out of nowhere and just like took my mom, and just how like confusing it is. And you're scared because you're like, are these people hurting my mom? Because you're 5 and you don't understand that. And you don't understand like the gravity of that. And then just like my dad wasn't around, so I was like hopping around to my mom got out of jail. So like that was like my first core memory. And then kind of like my next core memory is when I had my first court date being in foster care, and they had a lawyer for my dad. Like he didn't really interact with them, but they still have to have that person there to be like, okay, well, he's in jail. And then you're kind of like confused. You're like, I haven't seen you since I was 8. Like, and having to like have that like interaction. And then like just like when you go through all the court, they give you paperwork, and I was reading everything and just like looking at like finally seeing his rap sheet. Like I knew he wasn't in my life because he was in and out of jail, but looking at like their rap sheet, and you're just like, oh my goodness, like it's so long, there's so much stuff on here. It wasn't anything violent, but just like how long it is, like how long he's been in and out of jail. Like those are like some of the core memories that I have. And also just like reconnecting with him, like going through foster care, because you can like at this time you can email them now. So those are kind of like my core memories of being in foster care.
All right, thank you so much for sharing. And it's really, really is good to hear, and I love the email part too. And that's why I know that like the criminal justice part, where that like passion comes from for you wanting to fight for that. I know that comes from that part. So it's good to hear you speak more freely and go into a little bit more detail. But different from the first part of the conversation, part 1 of the conversation, because it's now starting to put perspective into the way that you write. Like now that I kind of have a little bit of more understanding. So thank you so much for sharing. So Jackie, I'll pass that same question over to you. As a former foster youth who had a parent who was incarcerated, what is like a core memory that you remember, or like, something significant that you can pull from that time before you went through your healing process, or if you're still, if it's still something that you're holding on to?
Thank you. I think that's a really great question. I think two vivid memories that stand out to me is one, the day I was removed, and the day I was removed from my mom at the time, and placed into foster care. Like Ariel, I was 5 years old as well. And I mean, you can imagine a 5-year-old has no comprehension of what's happening. I was scared. I was alone. I saw a lot of cops. I saw a lot of, social workers, but at the time I didn't know they were social workers. And so it was a really scary and lonely time. And it wasn't until I started getting older, I started, understanding what was going on. And the second vivid memory I have of my time in foster care is when I was a senior in undergrad, and I came home to my transitional housing program, and I had a letter from my father from prison. And I remember just, going so many years, like 20, 21 years of never hearing from him or never talking to him, to one day just getting a letter from prison was really vivid to me, and I'll never forget. But those are the two memories that stand out from my time in foster care.
Thank you so much, Jackie, for sharing that. And Alexis actually had to step away really quickly, but I'll save that question for her when she returns. But I do want to ask you guys, because you are talking about, the feelings that you felt and the emotions that came with that. Do you feel like that, the foster parents, the people that are around you, the social workers, do you feel like you were, truly supported during that transition? And if not, why not, and what was something that they could have done that could have had, better, made that transition better for you, as being a youth that's transitioning into foster care because their parent now has to, go to jail. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll Ariel, I'll start with you. I'm sorry.
I definitely didn't feel supported. Where I was Alameda County, which has like the second most after LA. So there's just a lot of kids, not enough homes, especially in the Bay Area in particular. So it was just like I felt like dumped at a house and just like, you sink or you swim, kid. Like I didn't feel like someone was checking in on me. Like I just feel like it could have been something like, how are you doing? Like there was none of that. There was none like, how are you doing? Like, how are you adjusting? Like, how can we help you through that? Like there was like none of that. It's like they drop you off at a house and then you have like all these rules and like, you're just like in shell shock. So, and the social workers they didn't really help bridge the communication between like my dad, who was currently incarcerated at the time. It was more so like my dad reached out to my half sister, and my half sister helped bridge the gap, so I was able to have access to him. So I'm grateful for my half sister for stepping into that role, but they didn't help me like at all. They didn't help me with the emotional aspect of it. They didn't help um they didn't even help connect me with my dad's side of the family as well. Like it all was just like, my auntie saw me on the street and she was like, oh my God, that's my niece. And then she had worked for social services. So she reached out to her friend and then they were able to get in contact with me. But it was really sad that I could have fell through the cracks and not have had any contact with my dad's side of the family or my dad if other people didn't step in to intervene. And it's just really sad because like, as someone who was 14, which is such a pivotal age, because like, you're going through puberty, you're going through high school, people are asking what you're going to do with your life. And now you're in foster care, like you need stability and you need support. And I didn't receive that. I felt like I was a burden. And that is something that is so hard to carry when you're 14, because you already have gone through trauma, being removed from your home, and now to feel like a burden to someone, like that's a lot. And that can be emotionally scarring. That can cause you to have intimacy issues, that can cause you to have issues where you don't feel comfortable telling someone that if you're in an abusive relationship, or there's just so many other other things that can cause someone that has a developing mind. And I understand that they were overworked and underpaid, but just, we are human beings that are going through a complex issue at such a young age. We need compassion. And that's what I wish that I received. There was no compassion. I'm starting to get teary-eyed thinking about it, but it was just horrible just to be left somewhere. And they're not even telling you how you can get in contact with your family. So that was my experience. I know it's not everyone's experience, but unfortunately that was mine. And yeah, that's what came to my heart just now.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate your response, because compassion is definitely something that I feel like that we all feel like we could have got something of. Like, I definitely feel like that we kind of deserved a little bit of grace. Like, instead of them like reading the paperwork and like being like, well, she did this, she's angry. It's like, well, how about, that this happened to me, or like I'm dealing with these emotional traumas, or I probably need some mental health service because like I'm having suicidal issues. Is multiple people living in my head right now, because I'm dealing with multiple settings and situations that I shouldn't even have to be experiencing, even having to put myself in like adult shoes at such a young age. And so I really, 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 really love that. And one of the things that I always encourage, please, if you feel free and you need to cry and let it out, feel free to let it out, baby. This is a safe space and you are not going to be judged, you know, for getting emotion. I think that will, you know, it's people out here in the world that's listening. It's a young foster youth on this in the audience right now, and that's probably going through something that you have experienced. And just by you uplifting your voice will probably give them the opportunity and courage to want to uplift theirs, or at least help some of the people that work in those capacities want to reshape the way that they think and how they see us. And so thank you, baby. I always love you get emotional now out here. And so the question is, when you were transitioning into foster care, you know, what was that support like? How was that support coming from foster parents and social workers? Did you feel like you were supported? If not, what was something that they could have done to support you? And then so Alexis, thank you so much for rejoining us. I'll pass that over to you. And then Jackie, you can chime right in afterwards.
Thank you. Yeah, for me, I feel like just kind of, again, just it took a lot for me to really talk about, like, and really understand, like, I didn't come from the same background as a lot of people, and that is mind-blowing, I guess, or I'm not sure. Like, I never really had to make a bed. I had like nannies and like maids. And so like going into foster care, people didn't believe that. Like still to this day, people are like, I was talking to my Roro's family, so it's like my chosen family, and they told me like, you know, we still never believed your mom was white until like we saw her and she looks exactly like you. And so it's like those kind of things that I had to navigate early really helped me kind of understand the world and like the world that we live in. And, you know, just being a mixed kid back in the 90s is totally different than how it is today. And like people don't realize that either. And so I just wish that I had more, again, like everyone is saying, compassionate social workers who really put on that racial equality lens and who really advocated for me and really like just propelled me. I've had people withhold bus passes from me, and I've had like really great social workers who've given me everything that I needed and more. And so, you know, I really value just those social workers who are underpaid and overworked, who are still doing amazing work. And I know all we hear is like really bad stories, but that's not always the case. Like there are people doing amazing work. And I just wish that, you know, people in the system understood, just like Jackie was saying that, or I mean, Ariel was saying that we're not like Amazon packages or robots, we're people and we should be treated as people and we have to be seen as people. And I had a really cool judge who was like, oh, you do this? Like, well, at least you're not out there doing this, or like maybe like you're going to school, so at least we'll allow that to happen, even though it shouldn't be happening. Like it wasn't like horrible. It's just like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, but we're gonna let you do it because, you know, you're going to school. Obviously, you're saying it's a coping mechanism. Let's, you know, however you feel like you need to cope, let's allow you to have that autonomous decision about yourself. And so that's what was really needed for me.
Yes, thank you so much, Alexis. I really, really, really love that response. I really love some of the things that you said. And I think that it's really some good tools and strategies that social workers and foster parents can take away in terms of how to like better transition foster youth into, you know, into their world, and like, you know, and to offer up some support. And sometimes, you know, having to take risk and do things off paper, you know, because and against, you know, against the better good or the grain, go against the grain, you know, because it literally shapes, you know, people and helps make people better, you know. And so I love that you mentioned that there are good social workers, because we're definitely going to go into that. But I want to allow Jackie first to answer the question. So what was something that a caregiver, a social worker could have done to help make that transition into foster care better for you?
I think Ariel and Alexis really hit it on the head. I think compassion is just the number one thing. At the end of the day, these are like real people's lives. Like I know it's like a job for social workers. And now that I'm older, you know, I completely understand. Oftentimes social workers are overworked and underpaid. I hate to say that, I hate to keep on saying that, but it's the truth. But at the end of the day, I had a really good experience with my social worker. He was the best social worker. He went above and beyond. But so many of my peers had bad social workers. And I would always just think like, these kids' lives don't just end at Friday at 5 p.m. Like stuff really still goes on. And at the same time, I encourage social workers to find, that there's a very fine line with boundaries and self-care and stuff, but you went into this profession for a reason, and usually the reason is really good. You want to help people, you want to give back. But and to answer the other part of the question, I don't think there was any kind of like specialized care for me navigating a parent who was incarcerated. I mean, my first social worker was like fresh out of college. I was probably one of her first cases. She didn't really know. She was kind of just going through the motions and stuff. But everyone can have compassion. You don't need to learn that. You don't need to go to school for that. And just answering the phone, checking in. And one thing I want to say about going against the grain is like, listen to the kids, because oftentimes I always felt like I knew at the time what was best for me and what I wanted. And oftentimes I see social workers going really by the books and, oh, we can't do this, we can't do that. Even as simple as like, passes if you're in a group home, or like being able to arrange like phone calls. I just feel like there's a lot of balls dropped, and this is like really shaping real people's lives at the end of the day. And it's so pivotal that these youth have a good time in care, or being able to be connected to their family members or whatever it is they need, having to fill out an application for a tap card or bus card so they can get to school, they can get to work, things like that, where I've seen the ball just drop because, the social worker doesn't want to do it. But just at the end of the day, I would say these are real people's lives. These are real kids. And, one day this kid's going to grow up, and let me tell you, they're never going to forget you.
Right. They're never going to forget you, both good and bad. And I love that, because like, unfortunately, I didn't have good social workers. Like, I didn't get a good social worker until my last social worker. But literally, I always shout her out, Jean Torres. She was like phenomenal, and she took care of me, and she taught me how to work the system, if so to speak. And so I appreciate all of you guys. I'm like really cheesing if you guys see me, because I just love the responses and just how well spoken everyone is, and just like how like just well in tune everybody is. And so to the next question. So I know we were just talking about social workers and foster care parents, and like what caregivers and what they could have done better. What about like school officials and like people that work in programs that you were a part of as foster youth? Did they ever make you feel misjudged, like make you feel did they ever mistreat you or make you feel judged because of your family circumstances? And if so, what was that experience like for you? And I'll start it over with you, Jackie.
I would say teachers and caregivers and other people were pretty good about my family circumstances, but I think the issue that came up in school when I was younger, and I think things are changing now. It's been a minute since I've been in like elementary and middle and high school, where these questions, your parent this, your parent that, and always kind of feeling misplaced. And I think when we start having conversations in these settings, it's good to, use like an ambiguous term, like maybe caretaker, the person you live with, something like that. Not everyone even lives with their parents. Some people are not in foster care. They may live with their aunt, their grandma, a whole family of 10. And so just being mindful with the language that you use, and not assuming, because I would always get questions like, oh, what do your parents do? Or I don't know, something about my parents, and that always made me uncomfortable, and I felt misplaced in those circumstances. But I would say for the most part, those caregivers, teachers, they were really good and really understanding.
Yes, thank you so much for that positive perspective. We also, while we like to get into the, the trauma and all of that good stuff, in the healing process, I always like to give the flowers to the good social workers, the good foster parents, and give some advice to them too, because, foster parents struggle, in the dailiness of being foster parents and having to, it's a side of that, their experience to that experience for them too as well. And so, having these type of platforms where we can give them advice and, different experiences that we had so that they can better reshape their thinking and how to, go about doing things differently, is always a plus for us. So thank you, Jackie, for sharing that. And now I'll pass it over to Alexis, and then Ariel, you can jump right in after her.
Can you repeat the question one more time?
Yes, I can. And so outside of, because we talked about social workers and caregivers, foster parents, outside of them, were there school teachers, officials, those programs that you were a part of during those times, did they ever mistreat you or make you feel judged because of your family circumstances?
I don't think so. For me, I feel like a lot of different programs or school-based services were really cool about like understanding where I was coming from and understand what was going on. Like when I had a social worker who was like literally withholding a bus pass from me for whatever reason, like for months and months. And so like, I'm 16, 17 and I don't have like money like that. And so like trying to get to school, I promised that I would bus it to school. And if I can't take the bus, then how am I supposed to get to school? And I was supposed to take 2 buses. And so like my social worker went to my school one time and like told them I need to get a ticket for not showing up at school as much as I should. But it's like, how can I do that if I don't have a bus pass? And so like, it was like this whole thing. But instead of that, like my school was so cool. And they were like, no, like Alexis already tells us like what's up. And like, I always talk to everybody there and all the administrators. And so they already knew like what was going on. And they were like, no, like they already set everything up for me. Like I was already on top of everything and doing my homework and everything. So they were really cool. And all my teachers were cool and allowed me to turn in almost like a continuation school, but not really. It was regular school. So it was really cool that they allowed me to do that because I told them how much it means to stay in my school of origin. And I went to that school for like 3 years until I decided to go somewhere else just to be closer. But yeah, I really appreciate that they allowed that. I feel like what Jacqueline was saying, or what Jackie was saying, is that they did like it really is uncomfortable when you have to do those assignments where it's like, do your family tree. And it's like, no. Like I can do me and my cats and that's as far as it goes. But like anything else, I don't know things about like my mom. I talk to my grandpa, but I barely know things about him. And like, I don't know how to initiate those conversations about certain things because there's a lot of traumatic events in all of our lives that like, I don't want to bring up PTSD and like different things. So yeah, just being very mindful of like what you're saying when you're talking about like maybe a family structure or who's important in people's lives or curriculum around like heritage and things. Some of us don't know like what our origin is. And so, yeah, I'll pass it back to you.
Thank you. For me, I didn't feel comfortable having those conversations with my like teachers. I wasn't particularly close to anyone at my high school, but one of the saving graces was there was a program called Highway to Work. And that was like my saving grace. That was like my safe space. That was like a place that I went to all the time after I got out of school. Like they'll pay you to go to workshops and they gave you money if you had like a 3.0, but like the people there they were just so helpful. It was just so great to go to a place where you didn't feel judged, where someone really asked you how you're doing and they actually meant it. There will be like, Ariel, how are you doing? And you'll just be like, man, like I'm at this foster home and it fucking sucks. And they'll just listen to you. And I think that's like sometimes like that's what we need as like foster youth are safe places to just like and to like unwind and to feel safe and to have jokes with someone. And I know I got to meet other people that were like in my same situation. There wasn't that many people from my city that where I went to school at that were in foster care, but I was able to meet other people too. So that was really good because I didn't feel like I was the only one, because like sometimes it can feel very isolating because like you might feel like you're the only person at your school going through foster care, and because you don't know what other people are going through. So to be able to go to this program and to interact with other people that have similar experience and like just feel like safe, you don't have to like put up a wall, um because it does feel uncomfortable, like in particular, like when people ask about my family, in particular, just like my dad, like I'll be like, oh, like he lives out of state, or I just come up with something, but I just hate having like those conversations. But yeah, so Highway to Work was a great program, and if there's any social workers on here, I would just recommend like finding activity for your foster youth to interact in, whether that's like Hack the Hood or like a local youth center. Like make sure that they're getting into programs that that can cultivate a safe space or give them skills that they can use once they get out of foster care. So I know there's some social workers on here, and and you might not necessarily have the mental capacity to like be super involved, but if you can find them a mentor, that's what I wish, that's something that I had as well, like a mentorship. If you can get them involved in that, they'll be super grateful, because right now during this time we need structure. The foster care system can be so discombobulating because you're in different people's houses, you're going to court, you're interacting with lawyers, you have an agency social worker, you're just your regular social worker. So just having a place where youth can go that's consistent, and they're going to have consistent access to like a mentorship or programs, can be essential in helping them gain skills to be adults, but just to cultivate like a safe place and community. I feel like that's one of the hardest things when you're in foster care, is maintaining relationships and building new ones. So I would just recommend like social workers getting tapped with the programs that they have in their local counties and try to get them involved early, so they can start to build that, because I don't know where I would be without my Highway to Work program. And like they have like kind of like another little social worker within that program, and they made me feel seen. They got me a birthday cake on my birthday. I'll never forget that. Like she got me a cake, had my name on it, like just those little things. Like I would never forget that. Like in my darkest side, like this this woman brought me a cake. Like I didn't think she would do it. I didn't know she would do it. But that's because I was part of this Highway to Work program. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Ariel. I love the positiveness that you talk about, as you are talking about the different programs and what they offered you, and the advice that you're offering social workers and other program leaders out there, to how to better, assist, and, some key tools they can take away from this conversation, that they can provide, a safe space, being able to allow you to vent and just be quiet and listen, allowing you to communicate what it is that they think they want, even if you don't think that's what they need, and so I love all of them. And towards the end of the conversation, we're going to get into, the advice and, all of that stuff. But I want to circle back and focus on trauma and generational curses, because a lot of us, has been experienced the foster care system. And I know one of the things that held me back from becoming a mom was I am not happen. I'm not sure what just happened or what just happened. It just kicked me out. But what I was saying was, even in like the process or progress that I was making or having, it was, still trauma, and people were still thinking that, I was going to follow up, in the footsteps of my parents. And so, what was that like for you guys? How was that healing process, or like, fighting through that trauma, working through that trauma to get you to the space right now where you're at? Coming from, having to not only deal with the experience of having an incarcerated parent, but then also having to deal with the experience of being, incarcerated while in foster care. Like, I essentially feel like they're both go hand in hand. And so, what was that like for you guys? What was that trauma like? What was that pathway like to success to get you to this point, so that you can fight generational curses? And Ariel, I want to start with you because you're a mom. What is that experience like, having that lived experience, and then, having to now function as an adult, and, trying not to, lead a life or pass those experiences down to, your child, or like, to the people around you, building relationships, maintaining relationships, etc.
Well, it all started, like I already said, one of the biggest things about being in foster care was that I was taken out of an environment that made me feel unwanted, unseen, unheard, and being put in an environment where I wasn't given those things, but I was given the space to just fully be myself. And that in of itself was like the first step in me being able to heal. But the number one thing that helped me before I even got into mental health services was me just being really clear on my values. What do I value? What are my values? What are things that I live by, and creating that? And I didn't even know, like I started my first foster home. Another thing that was great, they had a computer. Something that I feel like isn't talked about a lot, but like in lower income communities, access to computers isn't something that's readily available, and that was something that was readily available to me. But I remember like, oh my God, she has a computer. I was so juiced, and I didn't have any value. I didn't know like what my values were, because like at that time, like I was just filled with I just believe what was input to me. Like you're not this, you're not pretty enough, you're not this, you're not that, right? So I just Googled values of a happy person, literally. Values of a happy person, and I just built off of that. Then I found Pinterest. And then I actually got into therapy, which helped build like it helped me release the trauma, but it also helped me build skills to deal with adversity, because I feel like that's the number one thing that's really hard for fostering, because we already deal with a lot of adversity to be placed in foster care, and then to be treated like we're criminals in a sense when we're in foster care. Like that can make us very much want to act out against authority, against help, against relationships, against those things. So that was like the number one thing for me, is just like that therapy afforded me was just like the ability to deal with adversity. And this is like a really hard question. I'm glad that you asked it, because I'm just thinking about it. I just think there's just like innately, like I knew that like I was born to break the generational curse in my family. Like there's nothing else I can say. And it's just weird, because like everyone in my family knew it. Like, 'cause I like my nana will be like, I feel like I know that you're gonna break this cycle. Because like in my family, like it's been like 4 or 5 generations of really bad mother-daughter relationships. My mom was placed in group homes. I didn't even know, but she was placed in like group homes like in the 80s in Missouri, in like an all white like city. going through like group homes, and that's like a whole nother thing, because I was fortunate where I was only placed in foster homes, but group home is a whole nother like animal. And I know you had experience in it, so you already know group homes are totally different. So like for me, it's just I knew that I was not going to repeat the same mistakes. And that's why I continued to do therapy, continue to do the work, continue to have conversations, continue to be open, continue to do these type of webinars, which in a sense are cleansing, because you can, these are safe spaces and as well. So, it's just like part of me that's just like, I don't want to see my daughter have to go through not knowing who she is because I didn't deal with my mental health. That is something that I cannot look my daughter in the eye if I did that. And I make sure that I do that every single day. I do gentle parenting. I go to therapy. I try to make sure that I cut out self-care for myself. And I give my daughter grace, just like I would give myself grace. Like, and I feel proud of myself every single day because, I follow tons of gentle parenting people online and on Facebook. And I go to I'm part of a young moms group locally in my area. Like I'm connected to this because I know how hard it is to dig yourself out of that hole, dig yourself out of like not believing that you aren't worthy. I feel like that was one of the most hardest things for me to get over, is not feeling worthy, because I didn't feel worthy at my house and I definitely didn't feel worthy in foster care. And then going from that to having no support and being an adult, that was hard. It was hard to find my worthiness. And I cannot, as a parent, as my responsibility, I cannot let my daughter go out into this world and feel like she is not a cherished queen that she is. So I work on myself every single day, because I look at my mom and my grandma and I refuse. I refuse. I rebuke it. I rebuke it. I rebuke to create a situation where my daughter does not feel safe with me. I refuse to have that conversation where she can't feel safe to be who she is. I refuse. I will love her no matter what she does. I will love her no matter if she's for the LGBTQ, whatever it is she has, I will love her unconditionally, because that's what I needed in foster care. That's what I needed when I was a child. I needed unconditional love. And that's what I give my daughter every single day. And that's why I'm grateful for foster care for offering me mental health services and the space to cultivate that within myself. So thank you.
Yes, I love when you talk, and I love the self-improvement, you going out of your way to become part of mom's groups. I think mental health is something, and we're going to talk more about mental health too in my next question, but I think mental health is something that a lot of foster youth are scared of, because of the stereotype and the shadow, that black cloud that was kind of placed over it. A lot of us wasn't interested in going to, mentally become better and relieve ourselves and heal ourselves of the trauma. And I think a lot of us are starting to reshape the way that we think now. And a lot of us are starting to want those services and appreciate those services. And so I want just to say, sidebar, that you are worthy, and your baby is definitely proud of you. Like, in the short amount of time that I've known you, I'm proud of you. And so just like to offer like that little words of encouragement, because I felt you in my spirit getting a little emotional. And of course, this is a safe space that's open for you to do so. But you have me, and and I want you to feel empowered always. And so thank you so much for sharing always, which is sweet comments. And so I'll pass the same question over to Alexis, and then Jackie, you can hop in with your answer. Do you guys need me to repeat the question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, perfect. And so we're talking about trauma and breaking generational cycles. And so we're from a foster youth often, it's the feeling is, or the stereotype is that our children are gonna go through the same experiences. Your parent was, incarcerated, so they think that we're gonna be incarcerated. And if that was our experience, which, that has been my experience, what, you know, what was that like for you, and what was that transition like for you? How did you go about breaking those generational curses, you know, during that healing process? What were some of the strategies and tools and steps that you took, as like Ariel had described?
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like for me, it's just I did have a lot of people and social workers and different, like, I don't know, community people tell me like, oh, you're gonna end up like your mom, this and that, whatever. But I don't know. I don't want kids, so maybe I don't know. Also, I like can't get a shot, so like I think that has something to do with it. But um I definitely don't want kids for multiple reasons, but I don't think that had anything to do with foster care. I just feel like yeah, like you just have to work on yourself and understand that you're your own person and you're not like, I don't know how to explain it, like you're not your family's like curse, you're not um like already like diagnosed to go through this. This is something that like life is just changing and everything is changing. Nothing ever stays the same. Even if you have something clear cut mapped out, it it never goes the way you idealize it to. And so for me, I just feel like working on yourself and just kind of knowing who you are and knowing what you want is really gonna um like propel you. I did a lot of things in my childhood, well, my teenage years that made me feel like, oh, maybe I will end up like my mom. But I mean, I was a teenager. I had that person, thank God. That's why I call her my Roro, my chosen family. I wasn't adopted, but they're my chosen family. And I feel like she allowed me to say what I want, to do what I want, to like extend. She allowed me to dress how I wanted and listen to the music that I wanted. I like rock music and like, when you go to Black houses, like they're like turn that devil music off, and so like being able to express like no, this is me, this is my music, this is what I listen to, like this is how I dress and I feel happy. Like no one can take that from me, and that's what my Roro really taught me, is like nobody can really take your happiness or dictate your life. You really have to do that yourself, and that's what got me out of a lot of my teenage habits, is just thinking like I am going to be a successful person. I don't know how I'm going to get there. I don't know who I'm going to partner with to get there, but I know I'm going to be successful. And there's some things in my life I have to step back on, or leave some friends because they're just not gonna benefit me, unfortunately, or propel me or get me to where I want to be. And so even though I do still have like some friends from my teenage years, I've stepped back from that because I don't want to fall into that life of either what they're doing or what, I see a lot of what my mom did in them, and like I don't want to fall into that. So just, yeah, knowing your worth, being able to speak up for yourself and continuing to better yourself is really what I do to kind of break generational curses and I don't know, things that people say about me.
Yes, thank you so much, Alexis. I love your answer so much. Jackie, I want to pass it over to you, to give you a chance. And then we have two more questions, and then we're going to jump into the audience questions.
I absolutely love this question. I think I decided when I was 16 years old, like I was not going to be like my family. Like I remember having this vivid thought. I was not going to be like my family. I was going to break the generational curses. I wasn't going to fall into addiction. I wasn't going to fall into poverty. And I definitely was going to be the mom I always needed to my future kids. And so making that conscious decision, I started working towards that. I didn't know how, who, what. I just knew I was going to go to school. I was going to graduate. I was going to become someone that my family or none of my family was. And so that's what I did. But after that, because when I was a minor, I was really opposed to therapy, and I want to talk about that. I know I don't know if we'll have time for the next question, but I remember therapy being so forced onto me, like thrown at me because I was in foster care. You have trauma, you have this, you need to do therapy. And so I was so against it. But it wasn't until I was an adult, I realized like, yeah, I think everyone needs a little bit of therapy. Therapy is the best thing that ever happened to me. And when I came to terms with, who my parents were going to be for me and who they weren't going to be for me, and coming to peace with that and forgiving a lot of people in my life for me, it helped me move past all the trauma, all the stuff my parents did or didn't do for me. And I just want to, I'll drop it in the chat, this book that my therapist recommended to me. So if you have any clients or you need to read it yourself, it's called It Didn't Start With You by Mark Wolin. And it talks about generational trauma and analyzing the relationships that came before you, the relationship with your parents' parents and how that trickled down to you. I highly recommend that book. And so when you make that cognitive decision that I wasn't going to be that, and I was going to be the author of my own story, and I was going to break those curses and do the work that needs to be done with that, then I think you'll be successful. And another thing I want to mention, the last thing, is that knowing that there was a light at the end of the tunnel. I knew that foster care was not going to be like forever, and knowing that, because I feel like so many youth in care feel like this is my life, I'm in foster care, like I'm just going to end up like everyone else they say I'm going to end up like this is my fate. And deciding that there is a light at the end of the tunnel and you can be whoever you want to be will get you a really long way. So I'm going to drop that book in the chat if anyone's interested.
Yes, thank you, Jackie. I love a good book. Yes, ma'am. I love a good book, but I really appreciate what you were saying and some of the tips that you offered. And I love that you brought up mental health, because that's one of the things that I also want to talk about. My second to last question. So in terms of like mental health, seeking out therapy, being comfortable with going to therapy, and even if that's through mentorship, because like while I didn't participate in like therapy services, now I feel like that I still got like my self therapy through like books, reading, being around people who had the behaviors that displayed the behaviors that I wanted to take in, that had the emotional control that I wanted, and so putting myself in situations, removing myself from situations, all of those things, helped with the mental part. Having a mentor and someone to talk to, was like my therapy for me, was like my therapist for me. And so in terms of therapeutic services, on the road to healing and relieving yourself, or decreasing some of the trauma and PTSD that came from the trauma, what is some advice in terms of mental health and dealing with being in foster care and having an incarcerated parent? What is some advice that what is a piece of advice that you can give to another foster youth out there struggling with the same thing as it relates to therapy and mental health? I'll start with you, Ariel.
I think, like I kind of mentioned it before, if you are getting mental health services, first, it's really hard because not all therapists are made the same. But I feel like the biggest thing, and I keep coming back to this even now in my life, is you have to get really clear on your vision and your why. What is your why? Like, why do you wake up every single day? What, like what is charging? Like, what is giving you like the energy to get up and do what you need to do? Like, if you know your why and you have a clear vision and you're getting mental health services, woo-wee, you are going to be ahead of most people. So that's what I would recommend. And also understanding your values. I feel like something that's really hard, that was hard for me was, and it's still hard, is kind of like when you come from a traumatic or abusive household, it's really hard to decipher people and to really kind of understand whether they have good intentions or not for you. But if you understand what your values are, and you know your values are, that can really help you weed out people in your life that aren't trying to help you get to where you want to go. So like an example of that would be like, you have a friend that you go out with, but you always overspend with them. Like you can still see them. Yes. Yeah. Just watching Baby Shark. But like you might have to limit, like you can still be friends with them, but you might need to limit how you're interacting with them because they're not good for like your budget, or like, you know, it could be something else. But just like, if you know your values, it will really help you be able to figure out if the people in your life are helping you get to where you want to go next or hindering you. So I feel like that included with your mental health services will set you up, because you really are the company you keep. And I didn't really understand that. But like, if you're around someone that's gossiping or is not making you feel good or is emotionally dumping on you, which you got to be careful about too, you have to limit those people, because it's not okay for people to make excessive deposits out of you emotionally. That's something else that I noticed too, that it's okay to set up boundaries. And that is something that's super important, because as foster youth, we don't feel worthy to set up boundaries because of how we were with foster care and them looking at our records and telling us, thinking that they know us. It's okay to set up boundaries. That is something else that is super important. And the earlier you start working on those boundaries, the easier it is, because people that have ill intentions, they purposely weed out people that don't have boundaries, unfortunately. And as foster youth, we have, like, unfortunately, from my work I've done with other foster youth agencies, like, unfortunately, like a lot of foster youth are targeted for identity theft. Unfortunately, they get caught up in human trafficking as well. Again, just preying on people that don't have family. They don't have people they can go to for advice. They don't have a trusted adult in their life. And they see that and they take advantage of that. So also to finding your community, having that trusted adult, asking someone you trust, hey, like, my boyfriend's telling me to do this. And they can be like, no, that's not what love is. That's not what that looks like. Do you need help? So like community, boundaries, clear vision.
Yes.
And taking inventory of your values. That's something that I can impart on people watching here. Foster care or not, these are key skills to creating the life that you want for yourself. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, Ariel. I love that. You see me over here, I'm like, yes, yes, yes. Very great. Thank you so much for offering that advice and your take on mental health and how important it is for you to decipher and, you know, want to make that internal change so that it comes out, you know, externally. And so I'll pass that same question over to Alexis and then to Jackie, and then we're going to jump into the audience questions.
Is it the mental health question?
Yes. So in terms of mental health, therapeutic services, mentorship, which was like my therapeutic service, you know, what is some advice that you can offer to a foster youth that's dealing with a person being, a parent being incarcerated, and, you know, offer them some key, you know, strategies or something to take away from this conversation that can ultimately help them?
Yeah, I feel like I grew up in a time where like mental health services were kind of frowned upon. And so now that narrative is changing, and especially in people of color communities. And so I really can't stress enough how important things like holistic therapy, like a service animal or like doing art or things like that are important. And also just having like autonomy over yourself. Like Ariel was saying, I like a lot of people are like, why can't foster youth do this or that or blah blah blah, and it's like, well, maybe because they were never allowed to like even walk to the store when they were younger, or like take the bus, or do like go to a friend's house because they were too scared of like a liability. And so like that's not normal like behavior for kids. And so like it's really hard for us to kind of, or at least for me, to age out of the system and have like what Ariel was saying, like either boundaries or knowing what the healthy relationship looks like, or whether not even just relationship in like a partner. I'm talking about friendship relationship, um, work relationship, like burnout, different things. And so um just making sure people are finding time for that self-care and knowing what's good for them. I didn't really like therapy as much until when I was younger, until I had a therapist who really just kind of talked to me, and then like learned that I wanted to learn how to like do some kind of knitting or something. So she bought me like crochet material and taught me how to crochet. And like I was so happy because she did that, and I had like a little outlet to express myself. And so when I got older, I felt like that's when more talk therapy was kind of more like utilized for me and needed for me, because it helped me kind of work through trauma and different things. But I really guided those sessions, so like also not being afraid to tell uh professionals and therapists like, hey, I don't, they always want to start from the beginning and it's like I always felt like that was being really nosy, and I'm like, let's just start from where I'm at today and like work backwards into and like how we can better my life, and see like, oh, I can see where I have like OCD or PTSD from this thing today, that's affecting me today from something that happened like 10 years ago. And so, you know, just not being afraid to utilize therapy services in whatever way, support groups, and just different things. That's kind of how I deal with things, especially with my dad. You know, he was an immigrant, so he's like, I don't know, he's like really African, and like it's really funny that he's like, oh no, we don't do that. Like, yes, you have to do that. So yeah, I'll pass it to Jackie.
Yeah, that's so funny. I wanted to talk about my experience, like especially coming from Hispanic culture and just even cultures of color. I feel like therapy was frowned upon. I think times are kind of changing now, and people are more getting into it and realizing, oh yeah, this is the reason why I'm like this, and I am passing it on to my kids or whatever it is. But I highly recommend therapy, especially once the youth wants it. I think pushing making therapy mandatory is not good, but when the person decides that they want therapy and they want to work on whatever they want to work on, and that's when real progress happens. And I also think like finding a good therapist is key. I think there are bad therapists. I mean, I've met therapists that probably need to go to therapy themselves, and and that, right, we're all people, they probably should go to therapy, but not being afraid to say, I didn't like this experience with this therapist, I want to try somebody else, or I have a gender preference or whatever it is, or maybe I just want to do therapy once a month. I'm not open to it once a week, and that's kind of really how I started. I was like totally against it, and I realized as I started growing up and becoming an adult, I recognized the impact it was having on my relationships with my friends, the relationships with my coworkers, my own issues, and all that comes with it. And I realized I wanted to work on myself, and so I knew that I needed to go to therapy, and I wanted someone to talk to. And until I had that realization, it was really, really helpful for me. So I definitely recommend, and I think I'm really glad mental health stigma is kind of getting torn down, especially with our generation. And I highly recommend for you to provide resources to any of your clients or youth that may be interested in therapy, because there's a ton of resources. They may be a little hard to find, but there's free resources, even if it's not just a one-on-one therapist, just like work groups or things like that.
Yes, well, thank you so much, you guys, for being able to answer all of these questions and, share your experience. I do have 2 questions that I saw in the chat that I do want to ask, but we are winding down on time, so I do want to ask that we keep these responses brief. But one of the questions that was asked was, as a foster parent of emergency placements, I find that I'm the one who has to describe to the child what foster care actually is. What words would you suggest that they use? Or what words would you use to tell your former self what was going on? Oh, and any of you guys can feel free to unmute yourself and jump in if you want to answer that.
I can go. I'm just gonna say like one sentence about that. I think the most important thing is being honest about the situation. Like telling it how it is, and definitely in an age appropriate manner, but like don't lie, because they will find out and it's almost like it'll hurt them again. And so I would say being honest, letting them know what's happening, age appropriately, of course. That's what I would say.
Yes, I love that. Alexis, did you have something that you wanted to add in?
I like that too. I was still thinking about that question when I first saw it, because it's really hard, and that's really all you can do is just be authentic and I don't know. I don't know. I want to say age appropriate too, but I'm just like, some things you just don't, I don't know. How do you explain certain things to people? But for me, my situation is different because I knew I was the one who called the people on myself. And so I was like, you got to take me out this house. And so, I mean, some people already know, but for others, I feel like, you just have to be authentic and say like, or just say like, your parents can't take care of you right now. I know it sounds hard, but you just have to be honest and not like what Jackie was saying, like, don't be like, oh, this is La La Land daycare, like, and then they're there for like years and years and years, and they're like, when are my parents coming back? So that's what I have to say.
Yes, I love both of you guys' answers. And just to add in, I would say it definitely, in addition to it being age appropriate approach, it also needs to be from a non-judgmental, a compassion, which is something that we talked about, approach to as well. And then also one of the things that I think that I used to hate that my foster parents used to do is they used to try to argue with me about like who my mom or who my dad was. Like, you can't tell me who my parents was, regardless of what it is that you read on the paper. So I feel like that even with like the documentations and the paperwork, take everything, like approach every situation like you don't know the youth, you didn't read anything, you don't know nothing about their background, so that it could be like a genuine connection. Because what's on those papers most of the time is fabricated behavioral situations based off of like irrational moments and actions that people made right there and at the moment. Like, like I don't think my mom was a bad mom. I just feel like that she just didn't love me as much as she loved my other brothers and sisters. And so, therefore that was my experience. And so, Alexis, I saw that you had your hand up. I definitely want to unmute yourself, love, and chime in.
Yes. Yeah. And just to add to that, kind of the same thing is that, my dad is African, and in Africa, and that's a different culture. It's a whole different country. And so, like, my dad was a really good dad. I don't know how to explain that. Like, no matter what anyone says or anything, like, I always remember him as a really good guy. And like, he was very sweet to me and like very kind. But like, he had a problem. It's not funny, but he just had a problem with like putting his hands on women, and he didn't like understand that like you can't do that in America. And that's what I've been trying to tell people, is that like cultural thing is like you just can't do that here. And like some people just don't understand that because he didn't grow up here. And so like even to this day, there's things he tells me and I'm like, I'm an American. I'm not gonna do that. And like I'm not gonna, so yeah, but like when he went to jail and got deported, like he looks like a bad guy, but he's not.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Thank
And
you
just to
so much.
yeah, just to piggyback off that, I just feel like, just like kind of what the other kids said, of just like just being honest, but just being like, right now this is a place where you're gonna be staying, and we're gonna try our best to support you in this transition, and let us know what you need to make this transition easier. Just again, just with that compassion, because it's like they already said, like they're gonna figure out what foster care is. They already know it's like this is where they're gonna be sleeping, but just when they come into your place, you tell them, this is a place you're going to be staying. We don't know how long, but you are welcomed in our home. We want you to feel comfortable, and please let us know what you need from us to make this transition easier. And then just talk about things like, do you want to talk to your mom? Do you want us to help you facilitate conversations with your parents or your family? Is there anything that makes you feel comfortable, like a blanket or something, or like whatever that is? Just make it about them. You don't have to do a lot of explaining. They just need a lot of comfort and compassion. But don't push it either, because they need time to process. Just like anyone who goes through a traumatic situation, we need time to process. But also, I think something else is that you're not going to replace their parents. Like, you're not just going to like come in and just be like their parent, and like you're going to have like mommy, daughter, son, father, son situation. Like, you're not like that. So don't come on too strong, especially if you're getting older youth in your care. Come in as a place of like, I'm an adult and I'm here to support you with what you need. I feel like if you come out like that way and this build trust with a youth first, then let them open up to you, that will be the best. So that's what I would tell you to tell your youth that are coming into your care.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you. So we have one more, but I'm like going to try to tie this question up into like my final, like a final thought question. And so someone, or Jared in the audience, asks, was your relationship with your incarcerated parents supported? And basically wanted to know what educational services, could have been provided to yours, what specific services could have been provided to you to teach you how to survive being a family member of someone who was incarcerated. And so I would like for you guys to answer that question, but then also tie it into, like a final, also tie your final thought into it too as well. Oh, Alexis, you can start off. I'm sorry, you guys. I'm just so used to this, having you guys hop in and hop off. So I'm sorry, but Alexis, you can start.
No worries. For me, so the question is there any educational, like,
as any educational or specific services that could have better, supported you or taught you how to, be a member of, or, how to be a daughter or, a child of someone that was that was incarcerated?
I don't know. It's a good question. I wish that I was a part of more. Now that I'm older, I'm getting a part of more like juvenile justice, like coalitions or services, like the Arts Healing Justice or like the anti-recidivism, I think their coalition. And so, just, I don't know, just kind of understanding where like incarcerated people are coming from, and understanding that there's just a lot of things that go into that, like why people are getting incarcerated, whether it be because of a cultural difference, or maybe like continuous drug use, and maybe they shouldn't be in jail versus like rehabilitation or something like that. I have a white mom and an African dad, so seeing like how both their lives kind of played out is really interesting, because they both my dad is the only immigrant, but they both have been in jail, and kind of like in and out. And so like seeing kind of how my mom turned out versus my dad is really interesting, like that whole perspective on like how especially they treat like undocumented folks in these systems and just different things. So I wish that, yeah, there was more education, for me at least, to kind of say like, there's so many things that I didn't get because I like just don't think. I'm always like, oh, I don't really have family. And like my family is a big part of my life and why I am the person I am today. And so just learning about like what it means to be an undocumented, like a child of an undocumented person, and what it means to kind of have that. My dad was deported on Father's Day, so like I'll never forget that. And like I just don't do Father's Day anyway. So like just thinking about all those things, and kind of how to deal with that trauma and like feeling abandoned, especially when you rip like someone's supportive system away from them. And I really do think like, what could my life and my brother and sister's life have been if our dad was still like in America? And so, yeah, just my one takeaway would be like not to over assume or overgeneralize incarcerated people and who they are, what they might be, just based off paperwork or even why they got um into incarceration in the first place. Every action has a reaction, and it all depends on a lot of different things when it comes to the justice system, because it's just honestly not so blind.
Yes, I love it. Thank you so much, Alexis. And it, oh Lord, it just took my breath away. But thank you so much, Alexis. Just such positive, keys to success. Some good advice in there too. And I love the supportive services, the justice services that you name now, that you are a part of, that are teaching you different things and teaching you how to be functionable in those type of environments. And so I appreciate your response. So thank you again. Ariel, Jackie, you do not have to answer the question, but if you want to, I definitely want you to unmute yourself so that you can.
Yes, I'll go. I definitely wish that I was connected with more programs for people that have incarcerated parents. I know that at least in Alameda County, like they have like a couple different programs. I fell underneath the radar. They have a program called Project What, and they have like another program called Alive and Free, and then there's the Fly program. So Alameda County actually had a lot of services for people that had incarcerated parents, but again, like I didn't have good social workers, so I didn't find out about these programs, and these programs would have been great in addition to Highway to Work, because Highway to Work is only for a certain age group. So I feel like, again, like as social workers, just really try to keep a running list of programs for different type of foster youth that come in. Because I definitely agree with Alexis. Like I haven't come across any programs in particular for foster youth that have deported parents or in foster because of immigration. So there needs to be just more programs for those subsets of people. But just overall, like social workers need to keep a running list of resources. It's unfair that there's programs out here and that the biggest barrier is not knowing about it, because unfortunately a lot of these programs, like they're like word to mouth. They're not like there's not like a place you can go and they're all together and you can like pick and choose, because that's another community that you can tap into, and community is the biggest thing I think Jackie already talked about it, like social, like I think called social equity, but just like your social network is so important to you. It's essential. And if you're able to be a part of programs and you can extend that and extend help with more mentorship, more support with college, more support, that's what is needed with foster youth, especially because we didn't get that from our parents, you know? So social workers, please try to be tapped in to resources that are available now. And also too, like there's a lot of like youth centers and other places where youth can get connected in doing social justice work, because that's also another way for them to be more tapped into their community and to be change agents. Because a lot of people are creating policies for foster youth and they have not had our experience. Like former foster youth and current foster youth needs to be more involved in issues surrounding our life and our experience, and it's not happening enough. So it's really important for foster youth to get youth connected now into social justice and social equity work now, because the time is now for people like me and others, for us to find our power within ourselves and then to be the change that we want to see in our community. So thank you.
Yes, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. And so, Jackie, did you want to chime in or? Okay, I just want to make sure. Just want to make sure. All right. Well, so one, I want to thank everybody that think that is here today, listening to our lovely panelists. That while they shared their experiences, shout out to all three of our panelists. At this time, you guys will see in the chat a post evaluation link. Please, 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 I am begging you all to, all the attendees, if you're watching this, to please fill this out. This will allow us to hear some of your feedback on how I can be a better host, what type of panelists and different topics and conversations that you would love to see us discuss as we are putting together our the rest of next year's webinar list of topics. Please use this form so that we can know what it is that you guys want to hear foster youth talking about. And so please, 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 please fill this survey out. You should see it drop in your chat. If you are interested in supporting Youth Voice, we are hosting and now accepting donations for our summer fundraiser, which will help build program capacity and help create more opportunities for foster youth. In the process, as I said earlier, of creating an externship partnership, externship program with UCLA, UC Berkeley, and San Francisco State University to open some doors for foster youth and give them some job skills and create some job enrichment for them that, you know, possibly some doors that I know I had to kick down that wasn't just afforded and open for me. And then this also helps us be able to afford and be able to pay for all of the different contributions that we, you know, that we offer and afford to foster youth. Every thing that we do, we pay our foster youth. For the panelists here today that you were able to listen to and hear about their experiences, their pay, workshops, etc. And so this is just another way for us to be able to support the Youth Voice program and support foster youth. And so if you're interested in helping us, please feel free to click the link. We also will be hosting an event next month titled Painting with a Purpose. And this is so that, you know, anyone in the community, if you're near the Lakewood area, would like to come out and paint a lovely picture, and the proceeds or the donations for the proceeds, or donate to the picture. I'm not sure how it works, but the proceeds would benefit the Youth Voice program and help create more writing opportunities and training programs like the one that I am dropping in the chat now. And so in addition to that, we have workshops and etc. So if you have a foster youth program in your program that you know would be interested and want to write but just don't know how to find their voice, please reach out to me. We host empowered journalism training. We teach foster youth how to amplify their voices, and we get their pieces published through our both our outlets, Fostering Families Today magazine outlet and the imprint. And so if you have not seen in the chat, our next event is going to be titled Foster Dilemmas, an online conversation about birth control and foster girls. And I will be bringing some very special panelists on to speak to their experiences about either being teen moms or just being young girls in foster care system, and being forced to take birth control, and especially with the Roe versus Wade Supreme Court decision and all the hecticness that's happening in the media behind that decision. This is going to be a really, really good topic to discuss and see what's about foster youth. And I think that there may be a mistake with the date of the event, so we'll update and have that actual date for you in your follow-up email, which you'll receive after this. Again, I want to thank all of you all for joining us. If you are interested in learning more and staying in tune and in touch with all of the great things that are happening with Fostering Families Today Youth Voice Program, please feel free to follow us on our social medias. To learn more about us, please feel free to visit our website. You'll find all of the information related to our programs. You can read some of our stories, all of the stories from our writers. We have the LA Youth Commission series coming up next week, which I'm so excited about. And I'm just happy to have this platform to be able to, do good work and bring advocacy to foster youth like myself. If you're interested in supporting us, please click the link to donate. Again, I want to thank everybody for attending here today, for watching, rewatching, whichever it was that you had to do. Thank you again to our panelists, to our lovely tech support personnels in the background. We appreciate you. And thank you again. Please feel free to reach out to me. I put my email in the chat, and we will talk to you guys soon. Well, we'll see you guys at our next event. And I'll talk to you guys soon. I'm sorry.